Alrighty guys, so we're going to be on a couple of different topics today. One of which is APUs versus saving a little bit more and buying a dedicated GPU and a CPU. As you all know, or at least any of you that have watched my videos before, I recently purchased some upgrades for my gaming PC. Now when this gaming PC first started out, all it was an AMD A6 5400K and 8 gigs of DDR3 1600 MHz RAM. I did not have a dedicated GPU. And the APU for the most part did okay. A lot of things had to be ran at 1280 by 720 or maybe a little bit higher on low to medium settings. It was not uber powerful, and I always felt that it was being held back quite a lot in the GPU area. I always thought that the CPU, even though it's only a dual core, had a lot more to give. I had it overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz and it was just not satisfying. So I went out and I purchased a Radeon HD 7770 2 gigahertz edition. It's not advertised as the gigahertz edition. It is the reference card from AMD. It's nothing fancy, single fan cooler. But the gigahertz edition comes factory clocked at 1000 megahertz core and 1125 memory, and that's what this one is clocked at, so it is effectively the gigahertz edition, even though it wasn't labeled as such. Now, let's go around to the side here, and I will open up the system and show you. But anyway, the APU by itself was doing okay, but I managed to get this card for 74 bucks online. And that was brand new with free shipping, and it made me think quite hard actually about why I didn't do this in the first place. Why didn't I get a dedicated CPU and a dedicated GPU? Because the difference in performance, and this is by no means a new card. This 7770 is from 2012. It is relatively old by nowadays standards, but I literally tripled, if not quadrupled, my performance in games, both in settings and frames per second. And it made me think, yes, APUs are okay for laptops and that sort of thing, but is it really worth having one in your desktop when just for a little bit more you can double, if not triple, your performance? I paid about $271 to build this system back when I first got it. I used hard drives I already had. I just bought the DVD-ROM drive, the memory, the motherboard, and the APU. That was it, and it came out to about $271. And it was a cheap build, but it did its job. And I also purchased a Corsair CX430. But for 74 bucks, I got this Radeon 7770, and as you can tell, it is the AMD's reference edition. It's nothing special, single fan cooler, but the performance gains were astronomical. And not only was this card $74 and it is the gigahertz edition, but it also has a lot more to give in terms of overclocking. This card, like I said, comes at 1000 megahertz core clock, 1125 memory, and right now the highest overclock that I feel safe doing is 1200 megahertz core and 1300 megahertz memory clock. Being the single fan cooler type edition, it does get a little warm, like 80 to 82 Celsius being clocked that high in this case. But yeah, I don't want to go through all the trouble of pulling the card out and showing you the onboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what this GPU is capable of being stuck in a case with a dual-core A6 5400K CPU. So without any further ado, let's get started. I don't have any sound hooked up to it, just the video and my mouse and keyboard. But I'll cut back in when we get this rolling and booted up. Alrighty guys, so we got the system booted up now. As you can see, it's running nice and quiet. Can't hear anything but the hard drive spinning, and that's only because they're old. But the system is, all the fans are nice and slow, all set to their lowest settings. GPU is idling at about 30 to 31 Celsius at 20% fan speed. And let's go ahead and run some benchmarks just to show you what this GPU can do. Wait for my Steam to decide to be Steam and launch for me. We're going to go ahead and run the BioShock Infinite benchmark. I don't have any speakers hooked up. That would be too much effort, and I'm kind of lazy, so you have to work with me on that one. Launch BioShock Infinite benchmark utility. Now I should say that when we first run this, the GPU is running all stock settings, so there is no overclocking besides the CPU. We'll run this and then we'll run Valley benchmark probably. So it might be a bit of a long video, but you'll be able to see exactly what this card can do. Have a drink of my trusty Mountain Dew while we wait for my slow hard drives to do things. Alright, so we're going to run the second one, which is Ultra with DX11 with depth of field with diffusion, which is supposed to be the most intense. So pretty much as high as BioShock Infinite will go is what we're going to run. So we'll choose number 2, and then we're going to choose 16 by 9 and then 1920 by 1080. Keep in mind, stock settings, stock clocks. Load eventually. That's the second thing that's going to be our next thing anyway. It's going to be redone, is I'm getting SSD hopefully. Yeah, that or new hard drives. But we are on ultra settings right now. 1080p. So far hovering right around the 30 to 35 FPS mark. System's still extremely quiet. So right now we're pretty much getting console frame rate 30 to 31 FPS, maxed out. This game looks amazing. My camera really doesn't do it justice. So it looks like we got anywhere between 30 and 40 FPS on max settings. And that was as high as it would go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to overclock this card. We're going to up it to my most stable overclock, which is 1200 on the GPU core and 1350 on the memory. We'll just do 1330 for now. And then this goes to the voltage core for the graphics card goes to 1.25 volts is where 1200 is stable. Now this will dramatically increase the temperature of the card. It's running 40 Celsius after that little benchmark. My one complaint about the card is I wish its automatic fan control was a bit more aggressive. It seems to let it heat up. It maxes out the fan at 100 Celsius, and I don't know what the max safe temp on this card is, but the fan, for being a single fan GPU, this fan has a lot to give. I'm just going to manually crank the fan up here so you can see how loud it gets. And this is, set it back to automatic. So it's running at 20%. So we'll listen for that fan to throttle up. It doesn't usually throttle up even the slightest until about 75 to 80 Celsius. So let's go ahead and run that benchmark again. I think I applied the overclock. Maybe I didn't. Overclocking. Yeah, I did. Okay. So let's go ahead and run this benchmark one more time. So that was 30 to 40 FPS, ultra settings, maxed out 1080p on BioShock Infinite with stock clocks. Now let's see what she'll do overclocked. And it's a decent overclock. It's about 200 megahertz on the core and a little over 250 on the memory. I don't know why Steam insists on trying to install DirectX every time you launch it, but it does. It always has. Alright, so again, second one, Ultra DirectX 11 depth field with diffusion, and custom 16 by 9 and 1920 by 1080. Alright, so 30 to 40, let's see what we get this time. This card also runs Battlefield 3 on ultra settings, maxed out 1080p at about 40 FPS. So right now we're already sitting higher than we were before. We're at almost 40 FPS. hopefully I'll have time to finish this benchmark because my camera just told me it's dying. So, but as you can see, there's a good increase there. It's staying above 30 a lot more. There's a lot less dips. We're staying in the upper 30 range. There's 45, 47. So you do get a decent increase in performance when you overclock this card. But that is what a Radeon 7770 paired with a 5400K can do. If my camera battery doesn't die, let's go ahead and run Valley Benchmark. Valley Benchmark 1.0. Now we're going to run this DirectX 11 on Ultra preset with AA disabled. Oops. And I crashed it because I was trying to open up Fraps while that was launching. Don't do that, doesn't like it. Come on, there we go. Okay. And if this cuts off while benchmarking, well, sorry, but camera is just kind of yelling at me. So this is ultra settings, 1080p. So you can see you can't really on that, but we're sitting about 27 to 30. GPU is about, and the camera's not going to focus, but the GPU is sitting about 69 Celsius. So you got 44, 45 FPS there. We have about a 31 average right now, 31.1. So this card cost me 74 bucks. $74, and it can practically max out the Valley Benchmark and almost every game I own. If you're willing to drop the anti-aliasing down, it can run Valley Benchmark at 30 FPS and 1080p on the Ultra preset. I mean, it's got some dips, sometimes, you know, 25 FPS, something like that. But honestly, for what it's doing, I have to give it credit. For a $74 card, it overclocks well, it stays decent temperatures, it's not overly loud. This is under full load right now. CPU fan still at idle. So you can't complain for something like this, what you get for your money. It was kind of a competition between this and the 750 Ti, but the 750 Ti was $139 and this was $74, and I really didn't have the $139, so this won, and I'm not disappointed by its performance. So yeah, let this finish up because it's almost done. Sitting about 25 to 26 FPS. For some reason, if you turn VSync on in this benchmark, it locks my frame rate to 30 FPS, which I find really annoying. We have an average of 27.7 with a score of 1160, a minimum FPS 14.9, a maximum of 46.2 on the Ultra preset at 1920 by 1080 with DirectX 11. So, alrighty guys, that concludes this video. If you enjoyed it, tell me you enjoyed it and thumbs it up. If not, whatever, tell me what I could have done better, and I will talk to you guys later.